Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you guys are listening to us on. As always, thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you for the kind messages, the positive messages and tweets, and the questions you've sent our way. As always, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it, and really looking forward to bringing this one to you. This is a really unique opportunity that we have here with this episode, as you could tell by the title. We're going to focus on getting high school players ready for college. And as my guest will explain, he's kind of in a unique situation with his school. And we'll talk about specifically with him about the expectations of the players who go to his school and the fact that his whole starting five is actually playing at the collegiate level next year. And so this is a really fun and exciting opportunity to talk about what can be done as a coach to make sure that you get those players who have those college aspirations, who are working towards that, to make sure that they are getting ready at the high school level to be able to play at the next level in college. So this is going to be pretty fun, little different topic maybe than usual, but I think it's a really interesting one because I know a lot of you listening really want to get your guys and girls ready to play at the next level. So very happy to be joined by the head basketball coach at Cross Christian Academy, Coach AJ. Coach Alan Joy is here. Oh, Alan Foy. I got that correct now. Coach, appreciate you coming on and joining us here. How are things?
Amazing. I appreciate you having me. It's always a great opportunity. One, to just talk basketball in general, of course, the sport, a lot of people love and care about and has changed a lot of lives. And then, of course, a great opportunity to, keep growing our program and get our program, more noise out there and more exposure.
Yeah, awesome. Coach, let's start with your coaching journey and your basketball journey. Like I kind of mentioned off the offset, I know that where you currently coach at is kind of a unique situation maybe compared to other coaches. So where's the game of basketball taking you? Where's your coaching journey taking you? And how did you end up at Cross Christian Academy?
Yeah, we all have our own story. Just like all my guys that are, on my team that graduated this year, we all have our own story. And, so I actually grew up in Delaware. I lived here till I was about 16, 17 years old. I played at a public school, wasn't getting, the looks and the exposure and to some extent, even the playing time I felt like, I should be getting. So I got, I call him my uncle. Just because it's easier to explain. I've known him my whole life, but he's a mentor to me. He's like a second father to me, those kind of things. He has a program that he's coached for 15, 20 years up in New Jersey, Doane Academy. And he kind of recruited me to go up there and play for him. So, I went up there, played for him for 2 years. Really learned a lot about basketball. I knew for playing for him that, the way he coached and how he loved his players, but were still hard and demanded a lot for his players, that good balance that a lot of coaches struggle to find. I knew, he kind of inspired me, if you will, to want to be a head coach one day and be a coach one day and impact people like he impacted me. So I played for him for 2 years. Then I played 2 years in college, JUCO, for a startup program. They were a first-year program. My first year playing DeVry University, based out of Fort Washington, PA. Played there for 2 years and didn't really get any looks after that. My body was kind of breaking down. I had a knee injury, I had a back injury. So I just kind of finished up my bachelor's degree and called it a day on my playing career. I could read the tea leaves back then, as they say. I wasn't going pro or anything like that. So I was just like, what? I played 2 years in college. Time to call it a day. I finished my degree and moved on about life. So, after that, I've always wanted to coach. I always wanted to coach, and I was living in New Jersey. And again, my uncle, you're going to hear him a lot in my story. My uncle was actually on the board of Cross Christian.
Okay.
So yeah, him. So the headmaster of Cross Christian coached him in high school. So it's small world. But yeah, so he was on the board. He said, "Hey, look, they're thinking of they were only playing Christian schools at that time. They just started the program. They were only about 4 years in existence, and he's like, they want to take this to the next level. Are you interested in going back to Delaware, going back to your home state, and coaching this program?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. Let's do this." So I moved back. We were pretty successful my first stint there. So we had three guys at that time that I coached back then from 2016 to 2018 going to play in college. And then little little thing changed, and he asked me to come back and be his head assistant at Doane Academy. My alma mater. Good chance for me to learn. I always thought, you know my whole thing is I always want to grow. I
Hmm.
never feel like I know enough. I always want to grow, and I thought I would really benefit from being an assistant for a few years from a veteran head coach. So I went back to my alma mater, was his assistant for 3 years. We won a prep state championship there in New Jersey as an assistant. We were runner up for the prep state title the second year, and then we had a 20. We had I think we won 12 games that COVID year. We were 12-3 or something like that. That COVID year that very
Yeah,
interesting year for
very
sure.
interesting one, yeah, to say the least.
Yeah. So and then so after that, I got a head coaching job at a public school in New Jersey, and never really fit in at the public school. It wasn't. It really wasn't. It was just a different thing. I like to be in contact with my guys all the time. I like to be in their lives. I like to be able to coach them year round. And with the public schools, I don't know how it is in different states. Arizona and all those kind of things like that out there. But like in New Jersey, like summer leagues, you can't even coach your guys in summer league. You have to have an assistant coach or a parent coach your guys. You can't be in contact with them. Those kind of
Hmm.
things. And I thought that that wasn't really for me. So Cross Christian had kind of called. I was kind of talking with Cross Christian headmaster again, and we kind of he was like, "Hey, you want to come back?" And we agreed for me to come back, and the rest is history, I guess. Now I'm back here. So
And let me ask as a follow-up to that, because I know you have a very small school in terms of population. How does one, as a student, actually get to your school? What's the criteria there? And I know you also mentioned as well, we talked a little bit off air that those who are going to be playing are high-level basketball players. If you could talk a little bit about the not just the type of students who get there, but also the type of athletes who make their way over there.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we don't have busing. So you have to. It's a commitment. It's I tell them, at the first team meeting, I told them when I got the job in August and I met the guys for the first time, our first team meeting, I said, listen, you're going to really find out if you just kind of like the game of basketball or if you really love the game of basketball, if you really love this thing, because it's not going to be easy. We had two guys that were commuting 40, 45 minutes a day, driving their own personal car to school, to get there.
Mm,
Now one was right there in the area. He was only about 10 minutes away. The others were about 30. So those weren't too bad. But 40, 45 minutes a day, every single day for an entire school year, that's a lot to ask,
yeah.
for an 18, 19-year-old. Um, and yeah, so we have one guy, he's going D2. He's going to NCAA D2 on a full ride. And then we have a couple guys that are going JUCO D2, um, also on scholarship. And one's got to kind of work on his grades a little. He wasn't quite NCAA eligible yet, and the other one, he just wants to keep growing his game and keep getting some more time because he lost the season because of a torn ACL.
Mm, yeah, that's always tough. The tough rebounding from injuries like that. So yeah, no, I don't
Yeah,
blame
yeah,
need the time. Go ahead.
yeah, we had three guys on our team this year that had torn ACLs their true senior years before they came
Wow,
to us for a fifth year.
wow, that is tough.
Yep.
I want to ask before we get into this about the basketball culture and the basketball landscape in Delaware. I think in my 3 years of doing this show, I don't think I've actually interviewed anyone who's from Delaware. So I wanted to ask you specifically about what the basketball scene is like over there. What how competitive is it over there? Do you feel like the game is thriving, or does it need help? How do you kind of analyze and kind of look at the landscape of where basketball's at right now in the Delaware area?
Yeah, I mean that's tough because I'm pretty hard on Delaware basketball because obviously I coached and played for a long time in New Jersey, PA, those kind of areas, and on the East Coast, New Jersey and PA is kind of almost the mecca, for high school basketball a little
Hmm.
bit. So I would say first and foremost, any state that doesn't have a shot clock is a little bit behind the eight ball. So Delaware doesn't have a shot clock. I wish they would. I haven't even heard any talks of them even having that conversation yet. So I wish they would, kind of, have that conversation and add the shot clock first and foremost. But I think Delaware's more of a football state. I would say football is more of their number one sport. So Delaware kind of takes a back seat to that. But there are a lot of people that are trying to put Delaware basketball to the forefront. Like there's a lot of coaches and AAU coaches that run Instagram accounts, YouTube videos. They're trying to push these athletes and they're trying to grow the sport in Delaware. So I think the future of basketball in Delaware is very bright. I think it's taking good strides.
So let's just get that shot clock in place, though, huh?
Yeah,
Get
yeah,
that going.
that's nationwide, not just Delaware.
I will co-sign that. Yeah, absolutely. Very happy here in Arizona. We're getting it finally this coming year. So I'm very excited to finally work with that. Long
Yeah,
time coming, and it's I hope that the rest of the states follow suit pretty soon.
yeah, absolutely. We played in 5 states this year. We played games in 5 states this year, and so we played in PA that had a shot clock. We played in Maryland that had a shot clock. We played in Virginia
Uh-huh.
that had a shot clock.
Yeah, so that then you're just it almost feels like a different game once you get the shot clock in there. At least in my experience, having played off it, it just feels right, but it also feels different. I can't imagine like going from playing with a shot clock to not having a shot clock and kind of making that change, as you play in multiple states. That must be kind of strange.
Yeah, yeah, I think that it more affects the players.
Yeah, sure.
I think our players it affected the players more than me because obviously I played in college, so I was used to a shot clock anyway from my playing days. But yeah, I think it's more of what they've played in Delaware their 4 years before they got to us, and then all of a sudden they play the shot clock. Now they all told me they didn't even notice the difference. That's what they tell me anyway. I will say we only had one shot clock violation the entire time this whole year. So maybe that's true. Maybe they didn't notice the difference.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, I guess if you do play with a certain pace of basketball too, sometimes
Yeah, we're
24
up
seconds
tempo.
feels like an eternity.
We are an up tempo team. There's
Yeah.
no question about it.
And speaking of your team, you mentioned last year how your entire starting five is going to be playing at the collegiate level next year. And I know you also mentioned that kind of the expectation for the players is that they are looking and are working towards playing at the collegiate level. So I wanted to ask about what did those players do to be collegiate ready? And what did you do as a coach to help them kind of get that exposure they needed and get their name out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess first part would be what did they do to get ready? They all, there's no secret to success. There's no secret why they're going. They work their tails off. We had our sports performance, guy. You know, we don't have a weight room. Right now we're trying to work on that. With a small school, we don't take state funding. Everything's either fundraising, donations, or tuition. So we don't have a big athletic budget. So we don't have a weight room. So blessed that I met the owner of Outtrain Fitness and Performance right here in Delaware. Delaware guy, he really cares about the kids here in Delaware, and we worked out a deal to where he's our sports performance guy. He went to Villanova. He really knows his stuff. Does great work. Can't say enough about them. So yeah, we went there 3 times a week. For an hour, and he worked our guys out. I'm talking about because we played 24 games. Like I said, only about I think we had 4 home games at the end of the day. So we only played 4 home games. The rest of them were all on the road, two,
Road
3 hours
Warriors.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a 7-man rotation. So I'm talking about most of it was stretching, mobility, opening up your hips, those kind of things, trying to keep everyone healthy. And
Hmm.
God, thank God we were blessed. Nobody got hurt with that 7-man rotation. Um, but yeah, so I think first and foremost they were very serious about one taking care of their bodies, keeping their bodies healthy, eating right, doing the right things. They're kind of treating themselves like college athletes before they became college athletes, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then of course working. They were we do have a gun that somebody donated to us. So we have the shooting gun. So they're all in there hitting shots on the shooting gun, after practice, staying an extra hour, whatever the case may be is. I got one guy on our team is a complete nut when it comes to nutrition. He has his app that they scan the code and it'll tell you the true nutritional value if it's a good nutrition or something like that. So yeah, I mean, they, like I said, they just treated themselves like college athletes before they were college athletes. So they got there for that. And then in terms of exposure, first and foremost, again, there's no shortcuts. For my 5 starters, I probably emailed somewhere between 100 and 125 coaches for them this year. So it was just sitting down and doing it, getting their videos out there. We have a video coordinator that videos every game. They do highlights after every game. So just sending those highlights of guys, trying to look at what level fits them, and then sending a bunch of coaches at that level their film, their GPAs, what they're good at, what they need help with. And, I out of those 100, 150 emails I sent, I probably only got 40, 45 back. But it's just doing it. You just have to do it. And then talking to them about things not to lose an offer, making it look the part. Social media is so big in the recruiting game nowadays, I think that, I would go on their Twitter, be like, have an actual profile picture of you, preferably of you in a basketball uniform, but at least have a profile picture and nothing crazy. Like don't lose your offer on your profile picture. Don't, if you have a good GPA, put your GPA in your bio, put your position in your bio, try to highlight your strengths that you can sell to a college coach. And for the love of God, watch what you tweet and retweet and those kind of things as well. And then and then when we get a college coach to come look at you, like I tell them all the time, if a college head coach or assistant coach, even with how busy they are, if they're coming to watch you play, they already know you can play. They're not going to take time out of their day to come watch you play, drive an hour and a half to come watch you play if they don't know you can play. They're looking for everything else. So when they're there, you should always be doing this, but when you're there, especially, watch how how you're reacting to the refs. Watch how you're reacting to your teammates making mistakes. Watch how you're reacting to yourself making mistakes. Watch how you react to coaching. Those kind of things. Be willing to dive on the floor. Be willing to take charges. Because they're not coming to watch you play. They're coming to watch everything else if they're coming to watch you in person.
All the intangible stuff there, all the conduct sort of thing and behavior type attributes.
Exactly.
You mentioned sending emails, and you mentioned quite a few. You're sending lots of emails there, and I'm curious, how personal were those emails, or was it just like that certain template that you sent? Or did any coaches get any sort of personalized emails about why maybe that particular player would fit with that particular coach or system, or did they all kind of follow a similar format that you would send to each collegiate coach that you sent stuff out to?
For the most part, it was kind of a bit of a template. Now for each player specifically, like there's a player that I was sending emails about, and his stats don't jump out at you. Like he didn't have great stats. But my whole thing is, with him specifically, when I would send him film and send him his GPA and send him these things, the big thing I would point out in those emails for that player specifically was the stats don't do him justice. He's a winner. He does everything right. He's a team captain. He's a leader. He never has bad body language. He's never a poor teammate. He's coachable. He's like a second coach on the floor. He takes charges. He dives on the floor. He makes the right pass every single time. He impacts winning outside the box score. So like with him specifically, I really preach those intangibles, those winner assets that coaches are kind of looking for at the next level. And then, with my guy that's going D2, he's 6'6" and can really shoot the ball. He shot the ball about 41% from the 3-point line this year. I was like 6'6" wing, shoots the ball at 41%, has a high quick release, can get it off at the college level, those kind of things. So like I said, outside of, here's his strengths, here's his weaknesses, his GPA, here's some highlights, I would always put a little paragraph about why I think he would succeed at that level.
Yeah. And those things too, you talked about a little bit more of those, he's a winner or things like that. I think that if a coach bites on that and is really interested in that, then that's something that he goes out and watches that player play like that. That's something that could easily jump out right away, seeing that in person. I found that sometimes you kind of can see it maybe a little bit on film, but when you see a player like that in person and watch him throughout the whole course of a game, you're like, oh, I get it. I can definitely see why that player is like a winner.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and again, I'm old school. Like, obviously it was hard to do for us this year because of all of our away games. But like when I was coaching and most of our games were in the same state, like when I was coaching in New Jersey and most of our teams were in the same state, I didn't watch game film. I would go to the games.
Yeah,
I
go
would,
see it.
I would, I'm one of those guys. There's things you see in person that you miss on game film, if that makes sense. There's just
Mhm.
little intangibles that you miss. I just have to see it live.
Yeah, no, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And I also did want to follow up and ask about the level of AAU and club that your players are playing, because some coaches might be curious about for those players to be seen by the right people, how high of level are your guys playing at the club and AAU circuit?
Yeah, now that they might not all listen to me, but I tell them all that if they're not on the circuit, they're 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 not, I don't want to say completely wasting their time, but like most of the time AAU, if you're not on the circuit or if you're not going to these big exposure events, if you're just playing, like I had one kid that I was recruiting that's coming next year. Actually, he'll be a sophomore, so we're going to be a lot younger next year. But he's playing with a local AAU team, and I was like, well, where are you playing at? And he's like Salisbury, which is 30 minutes away from us. And he sent me a couple clips of him playing, and I'm like, this is the AAU you're playing? I'm like, this isn't going to make you better. I was like, I don't think I saw a college player in this clip. You know what I mean? It's like, so you got to be somewhere where you're playing. One, you should have players that are going to play in college on your team, but then you should be playing AAU against players that are college
Hmm.
players, because that's at the end of the day, the coaches want to see what you're going to play like against those kind of level competition. And we have a really good AAU program based out of Delaware. It's called We Are One, and the guy that coaches the unsigned senior team, he's amazing. He's amazing. Like every day I wake up and he's on Twitter tweeting highlights of his guys from the past weekend, tweeting, tagging college coaches in them, those kind of things. Like they're I don't coach AAU because I'm such a detail oriented person and I've had some bad experiences with AAU. The
Yeah, sure.
schedule's always changing, those kind of things. So I don't do that. Um, but when it's done right, it's a good thing. It's just so rare to find somebody that does it right. But that program, We Are One, I'm a big advocate of. They do it right. And like I said, they're pushing the kids all the time. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. They kind of coincide with our vision too of getting kids to the next level, getting them college prepared, and getting them seen as much as possible.
And so, as a high school coach, it's incredibly important that even if you're not directly involved in coaching AAU, you need to definitely be plugged into the AAU or club scene around you and know the events or know the circuits that your players are going to need to be playing at in order to get seen. Because, and as I'm sure you know, not all AAU is equal, and
Created
not
equal.
all
Yeah.
clubs are equals. You got to be clued in and make sure that your guys and girls are getting into the right spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you don't want them to waste their time, and you don't want the parents to waste their money, and those kind of things. And there's it seems like nowadays the AAU teams just kind of spring out of the ground. Um,
Yeah, anyone
you
can
know,
start one sort of thing.
and anyone can start one. Yeah, and it's like I said, it's I guess it's like anything in life. There's the haves and have nots, and there's the people that do it really really good, and there's people that don't do it very good at all. Like I said, I kind of soured on AAU because my initial experiences with it was, just complete disorganization. The schedule's always changing, those kind of things. But then as I made more connections and met more AAU coaches, my experiences improved. So I
Yeah,
guess, like I said, I would say there's less there's less good programs than bad, but there are really good programs out there for sure.
awesome. Yeah, for sure. What are you running on the offensive and defensive end with your program? And is it designed in a way that kind of helps them get them ready for what they might experience at the collegiate level?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to teach my guys actions versus plays, if that makes sense. I like to teach them actions that they're gonna, use for offense. We'll start at offense. I like to teach them actions. How to properly, if the ball is here, if someone drives, one has to go corner, one has to fill, those kind of things. So, we ran two offenses this year. I had some quick hitters if we absolutely needed a basket, but for the most part, we just had an open offense. We ran a 4-out, 1-in Villanova motion, and then we also ran the 5-out offense as well with a bunch of like zoom action. We had zoom action. We had flare screens. We had pass and screen away. We had basket cuts, all kinds of stuff. We just left it really open, and I was more focused on how they played basketball versus teaching them set plays. Because as if your players know the concept in high school of how to play basketball, then when they go to the next level of college, they'll be able to fit into any system. If they know the keys to playing basketball, when to cut, spacing, when to slow things down, what do you do with a ball screen? How do you set a ball screen? Where do you set the ball screen? Those kind of things. Like I said, they should be able to fit into any system at the next level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's not getting them necessarily plugged into one particular like fixed role or fixed set that they can run within that program where they're kind of
Yep,
locked into a certain spot, because who knows what that collegiate coach might be looking for them to do the next year to
exactly.
get up to that level.
Yeah, exactly. So and I'm not knocking this. I grew up playing flex and motion and those kind of things, but flex can kind of be a little robotic at times. So like I like to have open. They can call for a ball screen and the 4-out, 1-in anytime they want. They can set dribble screens in the 5-out anytime they want. Spacing, I just worried a lot about spacing when they cut. And when somebody drove, where did the fill? Did somebody go corner? Did somebody fill? Those kind of things. I just worked on just good fundamental basic offense for basketball. And then of course, and on defense, I'm not going to say we never played zone, because we definitely did play some zone, but for the most part, I played man defense. With a lot of Loyola Marymount, not Loyola Marymount, what was Moser?
Porter
It's the
Moser, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
Loyola,
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
yeah. There we
yeah.
go. I
I know
said
what
the
you're
name,
talking about.
the college name slipped me, but
Out in Chicago, yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, a lot of his principles. We don't help off the corner. We force it to the base. We force everything to the baseline. Once the ball's on one side, we try to keep it to that side. We don't allow middle ever. We switch everything. If a guard ends up getting switched onto a big and they see that and they try to exploit that, the guard fronts the big and the backside help kind of plays the lob. So we did a lot of the Porter Moser principles. Trying to teach them man-to-man defense, because at the next level they're going to be asked to play man-to-man defense at a high level, and if you can't play defense at the next level, you're never going to play.
Yeah, you can't hide at the collegiate level. If you lack like those defensive principles or those defensive skills, you get exposed pretty quickly. So having man, I mean, I think any zone that even you run in a college, you have to have good man principles anyway.
Yep.
So if you're running a lot of man, hopefully then the idea would be those players can be plugged in and put into any system and be successful in college.
Yes, absolutely.
So with 5 guys in your starting rotation who are going to be playing collegiately the next year, I'm really curious and fascinated by what what was the process for getting all those guys to kind of work together and to be able to kind of play as one, where one or two players weren't looking to like necessarily dominate the ball or control what was going on. How do you get like 5 talented players who all have these collegiate aspirations to kind of come together and play for a common cause and a common purpose?
Yeah, I mean that is a challenging question. That's a challenge for sure. And I think that, like you said, they all want exposure. They all want, they're all there to be seen themselves. They're all there to get to the next level. But the big thing I just had to preach to them is they all need each other to succeed. At the end of the day, they all have their own goals. They all have their own things they want to go to and their own places they want to get to, but they need each other to get there.
Hmm.
You're not going to look great on film, scoring 20, 25 a game, but we're getting blown out every single night, and no, you're ball hogging and not passing the ball and turning the ball over and taking terrible shots. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
No good college coach is going to recruit you that way. So you have to trust your teammate. I know this gets thrown around a lot in team sports, but I preach that family atmosphere. Love each other, care about each other. It'll work out if you have good intentions. And the good intentions is always make the right basketball play on film. Put the right basketball play on film, and the right things will happen. You got to trust that the right things will happen if you're doing the right things all the time. I was blessed to have a great group of guys too. To be fair, I only had a problem with one guy all year, and he ended up not even finishing the year with us playing. But I kept him on for as long as I could, and then as soon as he was starting to disrupt and take away from everybody else, I had to do what I had to do with that. But like I said, for the most part, I had a good core group of guys, and that's what it starts out with. You got to be careful who you bring into your program as well.
Well, because that got me thinking about how you have guys who they said have these collegiate aspirations, have offers, have plans in place to go and play it the next year. And I imagine, and I'll let you speak to this, it could be potentially challenging to get guys to stay focused on the task at hand while they're still in school when they can already kind of see what's out there on the horizon for them. Was that anything that you had to kind of challenge or balance?
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, it's the fine principle of like I said, I think people I tell people all the time, like before we got on the air, I told you, we were 12-12,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people would say, look at that, be like, that wasn't that successful. But again, you got to go back to what our goals are. Our goals are, and Lower Delaware, we're low Delaware, so Dover's smack dab in the middle of Delaware. We're about an hour away from Dover, lower than Dover. So we had to, for our principles, the 12-12 wasn't as big of a deal as everybody succeeding and getting to the next level and getting those offers and getting to where they need to go and moving on.
Yeah, and it's kind of such a unique situation, I imagine, that you're in, where you look at maybe the win-loss record, and in many ways it kind of is second nature or second fiddle, or isn't as important as to where it is that your guys are going. And it's kind of like that feeling of this is our record, but it is what it is, but look at where our guys are going. And in a way, is that kind of how you measure like where the success is for your season, as to where your guys are going beyond high school? Or what is your success criteria as a coach when you have a group of players with those type of skill levels and aspirations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, listen, I'd be lying. I'd be lying before God if I didn't tell you that I was a little disappointed we went 12-12 for sure. I
Mhm.
mean, I think any coach worth anything in this business wants to win, obviously. But at the end of the day, like I said, that was second priority for us. The first priority, we played a monster schedule. We played, the Phelps national team that has two kids from Canada on it. I mean, we played probably 10, 15 Division I players this year. So I mean, we played a really big, we played a real competitive schedule, and the whole purpose of that was, well, obviously we know these guys have D1 offers. These guys have coaches on them. These guys have college coaches interested in them, already have offers with another year left, whatever. So we play them. We put our guys on the court with them. If our guys produce like they're supposed to and do what they can do, then they're going to get seen too. You know what I mean? It kind of went, the hand in hand with, we're playing this level of competition that are being recruited by college. We put our guys on the court with them. We're going to find out real quick what kind of level they are at. And, a college coach will know what kind of level they're at. Our guy that's going D2 played a school that had a D1 commit, and he had 27 points, 15 rebounds on him. So I put that on film. You had a D1 commit you played against, and you had 27 and 15 on them. You put that on film. It's like I said, we played a monster schedule, and like I said, I'd be lying if I wouldn't. I didn't tell you that I wanted to win a few more games, but at the end of the day, we changed all of our kids' lives. They all are in a better spot than when they got here.
Yeah, no, and that's I think that's really cool to have that sort of perspective where obviously, of course, you want to win as many games as you possibly can. You want to be as successful as you can, but then you can kind of take a step and look back and see like, oh, this is where my guys are going, especially as you said, when you're playing that level of competition. I mean, your guys, it seems like, are playing against other guys who are also playing at the collegiate level and getting kind of the right type of competition they need to be ready to play next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you have a kid call you almost in tears, when he got the offer he wanted, the exact offer he
The exact
wanted,
one. Awesome.
the record doesn't matter at all, at all. At that moment, the record doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, no, I mean to get the exact program and the exact offer
The
that they wanted.
the the exact the exact offer in terms of financial, the exact offer in terms of location, and the exact offer in terms of the coach he wanted to play for. The whole
Yeah,
the whole
yeah,
shebang. You
that's
can't beat that.
awesome.
You can't
That
beat that.
that's awesome. How do you work with your guys? I know you mentioned this a little bit in one of your previous responses, but I'll kind of ask it again here. How do you work with your guys to make sure that they're advertising themselves correctly and making sure that they're being seen by the people that they want to be seen by?
Yeah, like I said, we talked about it loosely at the beginning, but like I said, very beginning of the season, I asked them all. I said, hey, I need to know if you have a Facebook, I need to know if you have an Instagram, I need to know if you have a Twitter, and if you do, I need to know what they are. And I instantly went in there. Obviously, we have our own social media for the school program and whatnot, but I have a personal one as well. And I went on there and I kind of critiqued them. I kind of critiqued them all on their social media stuff. Hey, look, this one of them had a picture of a gray circle as their profile picture, and I'm like, listen, you could have worse things as your profile picture, but preferably you want a picture of yourself, preferably in a basketball uniform. Yeah, if your number one goal is to get recruited, preferably you want everything to be about that. And then one hadn't even, one didn't have anything about basketball at all on his bio. He had, I forget what he even had in it, but he didn't have like his position. He didn't have his class the year he was graduating. He didn't have his height. He didn't have his GPA. He didn't have anything. And I'm just like, every night I'm going to be tweeting out your stats after the game. I'm going to be tweeting out game highlights and all that stuff. And I'm going to tag you. If it's your highlights and it's your stats, I'm going to tag you in it. And then when a coach clicks on it and goes there, they're not going to see anything about you. You gotta sell your positive attributes. This is the worst. Listen, I'm still relatively young. I'm 31, but I've been around the game for 17 years as a player or a coach. And this is the worst time, and this is the hardest time, I'm sorry, in the history that I've been around the game to get recruited. So there's a million reasons for a coach not to recruit you. Don't self-sabotage. Don't shoot yourself in the foot with something you don't think is a big deal, but really is a big deal. So I'm like, don't say certain things on social media. Don't retweet certain things on. So I was like, there's a lot of them didn't even know that you could see likes.
Like yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, don't like certain things on social media that you shouldn't like. I mean, yeah. When they said that, they're like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "There's a tab on Twitter. You can go to the likes and see what you've liked." And
Uh-oh.
based on what you like, the coach might be like, I don't know if don't know if he fits in with us.
Yeah.
So and actually, I had to have a conversation with a couple parents, that were being a little too hands on. And I'm like, listen, I don't mind being critiqued. I don't mind being, asked about certain things, but I'm like, sometimes I was like, you got to back off a little bit. I'm like, I'm fine with it. I was like, but a college coach is going to be fine with it. I'm like, a college coach at the next level, they're recruiting you just as much as they're recruiting your kid. As crazy as that sounds, but like I said, there's a
and
million.
What were those conversations? What was it? Parents just trying to be too involved in the process, or trying to what were they doing that you had to kind of step in and have a conversation with them?
They were a little too vocal at games.
Okay.
They were a little too vocal about things at games, and they're more specifically, they were kind of distracting their kid at the game. They would say like when they were there, their kid was a lot more locked in games that they weren't there versus games they were there, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
And like I said, I just like, look, I was like, I love you. I was like, I love you, kid. I was like, I don't care if you critique me, whatever. I don't care. It is what it is. But I'm just telling you the truth about it. I was like, the truth is, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids trying to get the same spots your kid's getting. if your kid's the same talent level, same GPA, same everything as this kid, but their parents are completely hand off and the coach never has to deal with it, they're going to pick the kid that the parents are completely hands off and the coach never has to deal with it. That's just the way it is.
And that's
and
and I
they
was gonna
got
say
it.
that's hard. That's hard when you're, and I imagine that sometimes that can be a difficult conversation. You have
It
parents
was a
who are
hard conversation.
trying to want the best for their kid, right? Or they're trying to advocate, or
Yeah,
they're trying to be in their kids' lives, which of course it is that you want, but at the same
yeah,
time you don't want them to be a detriment and actually hurt their kids, chances of being seen or getting that offer.
yeah, absolutely. And but I think it was definitely a difficult conversation, first and foremost. But I think it goes back to, you know, I had already earned that kid's trust. You know what I mean? So I think that after that conversation, that kid knows I cared about him. The kid knows I loved him. The kid knows I have his best interest in mind.
Hmm.
So I think that after that conversation, I think that, they were a little unrespond. Yeah, they didn't really respond to the conversation great at the time. But my guess is I think they went home. The kid and them had a conversation, and I think the kid kind of was like, look, coach loves me. Coach cares about me.
Hmm.
He's not trying to pull rank on you. He's not trying to, just rule the roost or anything like that. He's just telling you generally, the truth about how recruitment works and all that kind of stuff. He just generally has my best interest in mind. And I think after that, things were better for sure.
And
Um,
yeah, to just have that relationship with your players, I think is so important. Especially, I mean, it's always important, but if you have players who are looking to uh, play at the next level, you as a coach are probably maybe one of the only authority figures that they trust in that, who's actually gone through this process or knows what to expect and knows what's happening. And I think your players are going to be putting a lot of trust in you in that. So don't take that lightly, because when you as a coach have to talk to your parents, talk to those parents, you want the players to trust you and back you up, because those players are putting that trust in you, that you know what you're doing and you have their best interest in mind as well.
oh, wholeheartedly. And kids aren't stupid. I tell people that all the time. Kids aren't stupid as you think. They know when you're being fake. They know when you have good intentions and when you don't have good intentions. So you got to be true. You got to be real. You got to be you all the time, and don't try to be somebody else. Don't try to fake it. None of that stuff, because they know if you care and if you're putting in the hard work. And most of my guys, would know that I cared about them and put in the work, because when I emailed these coaches, I'd be like, hey, look, just so here I emailed this college for you, this college for you, this college for you, this college for you. So if somebody follows you on Twitter, if someone follows you on Instagram, if you get a
Hmm.
message from Instagram, any of that, just so you know, heads up ahead of time, these are the colleges I emailed for you today, or
Hmm.
whatever. And eventually when they're like, eventually at some point, one, I tell them all the time I love them anyway, and I do stuff that they, I ask them how that, I generally we have great conversations. Like, that is one thing about being at a small school that I love, is you get real close with your players and your students, because it's such a small, like, you can't hide in a classroom of 6 or 7. You just can't. It's just not possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get real close and you have really good relationships with people, and but beside on the flip side of that, when they're like, wow, we travel 2-3 hours away. Sometimes coach doesn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning, and then still on his days off or his time off, he still email coaches for me. It's pretty self-explanatory that he really cares and is trying to get you places.
Yeah. No, 100%. And speaking of that trust aspect that you mentioned, this got me thinking about the fact that these guys that you're coaching probably have a lot of coaches that they've had. They have their club coaches, they have their AAU coaches, they probably have trainers, most of them, if not all of them, that they work with. Was there ever any sort of issue that you had ever faced where what you wanted your guys to do or the coaching that you were giving your guys came into conflict with things that their players said that their other coaches or other trainers told them to do? Was that ever anything that you ever had to deal with, or was that never become an issue?
Yeah, I had an AAU coach that two of my guys play for, that I just disagreed with. I didn't agree with his handling of things, and one of them one of them was the guy that I let go off my team, and gave him multiple chances. You always give a kid a chance to come back and get back to the good graces, but like I said, at some point when he was I felt like he was hurting the other players and their
Hmm.
opportunity. I had to do what I had to do, but he like called me and was like, what are you doing? Why did you let this kid go? We talked about the things that he struggled with, and he was like, well, that's just how he is. And I'm just like, you're not doing that kid any favors by letting him skate through life and keep acting that way. You're just
Yeah.
not, because there's not a college coach in the world that was going to put up with that. And I'm not going to go
Mm,
into details, but
sure.
I was like, there's just not a college coach in the world that's going to deal with it. Like I said, again, there's thousands of kids that want these spots, and they're not going to do it. They'll take even a less talented player,
Not have the
slightly less
headache.
talented, and
Yeah.
not have the headache because they have 1,000 things on their plate. The last thing they need to worry about is culture issues.
Yeah. And that's as a coach, I think you really just have to be confident with yourself and confident with your values and confident with the things that are important to you. Because if you're coaching these high level athletes and these ones who have a lot of people in their ear, they're gonna probably be hearing a lot of different things for these players from a lot of different people. And as a coach, I think one, you really have to be confident in what you're doing and confident that you're going about things the right way. And two, as we've talked about repeatedly, building that trust with your players so that they know that you have their best interest in mind when maybe they're hearing, 10 different things from 10 different people.
Yeah, definitely. And listen, because I'm one of those guys that like I don't want to give up on anybody. I just
Sure.
don't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that everybody can be saved to a point, and everything. But like I said, and I tried that. I tried everything until he started taking away from other people.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, I was like, we had to change our offense. We had to change our defense. We had, we had the toughest stretch of the season coming up. And I was like, now we're down to a 6-man rotation and we don't have a big man anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And all these teams had guys that were like 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". So I'm just like, is it really the right thing to do? Because now we're putting the pressure on everybody else.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to hurt us on the court for sure. Play wise, I was like, we're going to struggle to rebound the basketball the rest of the season, and we did. But I had a couple college coaches that came out very shortly after I dismissed that player, and they all complimented the culture of the team. Even in games that we didn't win, they're all supportive to each other. They all reacted positively to you. Not only critique the refs. Yeah, they were all lifting their heads up. They were all helping their teammates get better. They're all lifting their heads up when they were down. And sometimes even the best coaches, they all it's a tough profession, and sometimes we always you're always thinking of that. From the moment I wake up till I go to sleep, I'm thinking about the team and what's best for the team, those kind of things. So you always have a little bit of a second thought there. But like I had a couple of college coaches after that were like, man, they were like, you have a great culture, and and after that, I was like, okay, I was like, that pretty much affirms that I know I did the right thing.
Yeah. When you get those compliments, I mean that can mean more than almost any victory sometimes that you have when you got other coaches who will go out of their way to compliment the way that you're doing things. So what a great feeling that is.
Yeah, yeah, and I needed it at the time, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
especially because I mean that's a tough decision you had to make.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes into what I was going to ask about. In what ways would you say that you try and model your program or model your expectations to that of a college program? And to add on to that, is there any advice that you would give to a high school coach who might be looking to make their program more, college-like for lack of a better term, or more held up to that higher standard?
Yeah, I think it's the whole thing. I think it's the sports and performance side of things, making those things mandatory because you're gonna be made to do those things at the next level. You're gonna be made like at my JUCO, which again was a startup JUCO, first year in existence. We had a weight room check-in where you had to go to the weight room and you had to sign your name on the ledger
Mm-hmm.
that you went and did your lift that morning. So holding to the standard about the sports performance, keeping in touch, and again at a small school, I get people that are in a public school with 3,000-4,000 kids, and they have freshmen, JV, varsity to deal with. I get that's a little bit harder, but keeping an eye on their grades, making sure they are doing what they need to do in the classroom every single day, making sure they're in school every single day. Again, checking their social media, making sure they're not. It's a whole package, and again, running offense and defense, again, all with the idea that it's going to correlate and make them better in the next level. And then you have preach the little things, because at the college level, they aren't the little things. Their coaches, like I said, when a coach comes to see them play, they're looking for their body language. They're looking at how they react to themselves when they turn the ball over, how they react to a teammate when they turn the ball over, how they react when they're in a shooting slump, how they react when they're not getting the calls, if they feel like the refs are favoring the other team more than them. Preach all that stuff. It could be the difference between them getting an offer and not getting the offer if you've had that conversation. When I was an assistant coach, I had a coach, and this sounds ridiculous, but this is how fine a recruiting level is. The recruiting environment that we're in right now, how fine between getting an offer and not getting an offer. We had a coach come an hour and a half to watch a kid, good player, scored 1,000 points, and in warm-ups, he was wearing his warm-up around his neck like a cape. And I was like looking around, and I noticed the coach wasn't there anymore. And so I texted, we called the coach after the game. So what happened? Do you have an emergency? He's like, I don't want that player. I was like, he's a clown. He was like, you can tell he doesn't take it serious. You can tell, he's wearing his warm up around. He's trying to stand out. That he's a dime a dozen. He's like, I don't want to deal with him. He doesn't care enough about the game to take it serious. He's like, he didn't have his shoes tied. He's wearing his warm up around like a cape. So, that was my first year as an assistant. So I learned really early how much the little things that to some people might not sound like big deals, how much they care. And then I think,
wow, continue. Yeah, that's crazy.
And then,
continue.
And then I think that the other thing is to make as you go to the biggest thing I think about making your program and making your players more ready for the college level as a high school coach is don't sacrifice your culture for wins. Like I said, I had to do that this year. I had to make a decision. I knew the decision I was going to make was probably going to hurt my team on the court as far as performance wise. But you got to stay true to who you are. You got to stay true to your beliefs. You got to stay true to what you believe is best in the long run for your team, the culture you're trying to build. I mean, I've been here before at this school. I coached 2016, but this was my first year here, and first year back, and first year you got to set the tone more than anything. That's the biggest thing. You got first year they're all looking at you, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Because we had 4 or 5 freshmen on the team too. They didn't play very much, but we had 4 or 5 freshmen on the team, and they're looking at me, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and you have to put that standard down. And like I said, at the end of the day, you can't. I know it's tough. It's a fine line that coaches play, because at the end of the day, you also have to win to keep your job. So it is a fine line.
A bit of a balance there. Yeah,
it is a little bit of balance. Yeah, so it's a fine line, but I mean, the culture always has to stay. I believe that if you have a strong culture, at the end of the day, you're always going to find a way to win. I just believe strong cultures find ways to win. So I would just say don't ever sacrifice short-term wins for the good of the long-term culture and the good of the long-term program.
Yeah, and as you mentioned before about that one player who had to be dismissed from the team, it's a tough decision. It may hurt a little bit in the short and sting a little bit, and you may lose some things on the court. But I think that if you lose something temporarily on the court, that's a lot easier to get back than trying to reclaim culture if you let somebody like that on and let them kind of erode and ruin the culture.
Yeah. The culture's a lot harder to rein back in once it's gotten away than it is to just try to adjust your team to the best you can. And that's all I said. I was like, I told that to the team. I said, look, if I'm being honest with you, this might hurt us a little bit. I'm always transparent with our guys. I'm like, if this might hurt us a little bit in the long run. But all it is I was like, he's gone though. I was like, it is what it is. I was like, the quicker we as a team and a group get over that, the quicker we can move on and the quicker we can perform better. I was like, so we have to move on. That's all we can do.
And I think your players then, they kind of get the message then that, okay, we know if somebody like that can be dismissed, like any of us can possibly dismiss for something, and everyone just holds themselves, I think, to a little bit of a higher standard from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, and on the flip side of that, if you let that go,
Hmm.
like then it's a snowball effect. Well, he did that. Well, and yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, and you don't have
And
a leg to stand on anymore.
exactly. So
Before we hit our concluding segment, I am curious about this. I love to ask coaches who work with guys and girls who have players who are looking to go to the next level. When you are looking at maybe one of your players like highlight film or their film on Huddle or any sort of like highlight package that they're going to put together and send to a college coach, anything in particular that you think are absolute musts that need to be there? And is there anything that you feel like is unnecessary or doesn't need to be on like a Huddle or highlight package for a player?
so I would say, musts would be, as I know everybody likes to put the offense in highlight films, and that's fine. And there's definitely like today's game has changed from I don't know if you played in college or high school or not, but I'm assuming you did. And then from even when I played, things the game has changed. It's all about the 3-point shot.
Hmm.
A lot of it revolves around if you can't shoot the ball, you're going to struggle, and those kind of things. So I think that obviously, shooting the ball should be on there, those kind of things. But things people don't think about a lot on highlight films are assists, making the right pass, making the right, a very high basketball IQ play, and I think defense. I think that there's a lot of highlight films that don't have any defense. And again, college coaches want guys that play defense and take pride in their defense. So if you got guys that are taking charges, if you got guys that are diving on the floor, if you got guys that are getting steals and getting turnovers one on one, with the guys or even playing good help defense and coming over and trapping and forcing turnovers, whatever the case is, find ways to get those clips in. Find ways to get defense in. Try to find ways to get assists in. you know, Heck, if you really want to go one step forward, further, try ways to get hockey assists in, where it's a pass to a pass, those kind of things. Because again, I think those are the intangibles that college coaches are trying to base things on. And as far as things that don't need to be in it, you don't need these fancy edits. I've seen so many things on Twitter. The more involved I've been on Twitter, the more I've seen of these highlight videos. And I've seen so many, like maybe it's like a minute and a half highlight video, but like 15 seconds of it is just them in warm ups, making layups and warm ups, and then the music is playing. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to grab a coach's attention. You should be making layups and warm ups. You know what I mean? Like if you have high college aspirations, you should be making layups and warm ups. You shouldn't be missing layups and warm ups. That's not a highlight. So I would say cut back on those, and like I said, really try to find a way to get your defense on there, and really try to find a way to hit shots, and then like I said, assists as well.
I really like that you kind of mentioned of the taking charges. I love that. I think those like energy, those kind of like energy plays that you can get there that show that
Yep.
you're willing to, well, one, like do that dirty work or change momentum, because like those things I think um would really draw like a college coach's interest and really want them to like see those energy plays out there like in person and see like those big momentum changing plays or that hustle or those hockey assists or things like that. Because
Yep.
as you mentioned, right, it's kind of the expectation that if you have college aspirations, you probably should be able to put the ball in the bucket, right? You should be able
Yeah.
to do some of these skills. There's kind of a baseline expectation of what you should be able to do. But those like intangibles that you need to kind of separate, because not a lot of guys or girls are willing to take charges or willing to do some of these less flashy things. But if you get players who are excited about those sort of things, I'm like, put all that stuff in, because that stuff's great.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I talked about that kid that I sent at the very beginning. I talked about that kid with the email where I was like, he's a
Hmm.
winner,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everything I just said about making open shots, making the right play, hockey assists, taking charges. He does all those things. Like he's the definition of a winner at the college level. He's a guy that can be a cornerstone of a program when you're trying to flip the culture from like a first year head coach that's taken over a program that's never won. He's a guy that you want to get in there to show guys how to win basketball games.
Hmm.
And he took we played 24 games this year. He probably took 15, 16 charges. Like he really did. And he's like I said, he's a winner. I don't know what else to say. He just impacts winning. And every coach I played against, I think to the normal eye that's just watching the game, I don't think he pops out. But I think every coach after the game was like, man, I really like that kid. I really like him. He does the little things. Which in hindsight, the little things always add up to winning. So they're not, I always like to say the little things add up to big things. But
they are big, those little things. Yeah. Awesome. To wrap up, Coach, there's a couple questions I ask every guest. So I'll go ahead and start here with this first one, which is thinking back on your coaching career. What is a moment from your coaching career that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
I know we've kind of covered it already, but again, I think that again we talk about with knowing when to discipline a player is very important, and knowing when to do that. My first stop here at Cross Christian, I had a kid that scored 2,000 points in high school, and he did something, and I suspended him 2 games. And then of course the kid I kicked off this year was 6'8", and that doesn't grow on trees.
No.
Especially not in Delaware. But you got to do what's best for your program, and you gotta decide early. You gotta decide in your coaching career what kind of coach you're gonna be. If you're gonna be a guy that keeps the standard, or if you're gonna be a guy that's a little loosey goosey with the standard, and care more about winning. And I just decided early on that the standard's the standard. End of the day, I don't care. Like I said, the one kid scored 2,000 points, and the other kid was 6'8". The standard. Nobody's above it, myself included. It's important that the coaches understand that you got to hold yourself to that as well. Right. But yeah, like I said, that I would say that that's my biggest thing. That kind of the biggest story that coaches can take away from my coaching career so far is that nobody's above it. You got to be willing to discipline the best player just like you would discipline the worst player.
Well put. Well said. To wrap up, Coach, I give every guest kind of what I call a 60-second soapbox, but I'm not timing you, so don't worry. But it's kind of a platform for you to kind of get out a final thought, a final message, just kind of a closing idea that you want to leave the listeners with, and you can sort of take it any which direction that you want. So I'm just going to kind of give you the floor here, Coach, and I'm just going to kind of let you take it from here.
Yeah, so we talked a lot, so I don't know if I'll take up the 60 seconds. But I think the most important thing is, if you're gonna, regardless of if you're gonna coach at any level, college, high school, middle school, youth league, whatever, I think the most important thing to think about as a coach is relationships. I have guys that I haven't, from my first team that I coached 7 years ago that still text and ask me advice. I had one that, text me like 2 weeks ago, asked me, what kind of car he should get, and send me details of this car. And he's like, should I buy this car? And those kind of things. I like to think that I create relationships with my players that last, that are going to last a lifetime. And I think that's the most important thing. If you're obviously, when you're up to like a certain level, obviously D1, something like that, you're going to make money. But for the most part, if you're getting into this profession to make money, you're in this profession for the wrong reasons. The relationships and the impact that you make on people are way more important. Like when that kid called me almost in tears that he got the exact offer he wanted, I teared up. That's the kind of impact you should be having, and it shouldn't mean that much to you. When somebody, you need to be happy. You need to be able to be happy for other people hitting their goals, I guess is what I would say.
Awesome. So, I like that a lot. I think you did go about 60 seconds too. So
right.
I think you did take it all. All good though. Coach AJ, really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story and your journey on your real interesting coaching situation that you're in. Very rewarding one too, and one that was really interesting to listen to and follow along with. And I wish you luck, as you are such a busy individual as you continue to find time for all the different jobs you do, as well as all the work that you're doing, getting your guys exposure and putting their names out there. So thanks for all you do, Coach, working with your guys and advocating for them. Best of luck going forward, and keep doing what you're doing, Coach. Really appreciate you coming on and joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me. And like I said, it's always good to talk basketball with anybody. And of course, like I said, it's great to talk about the program and get our program and tell our kids' story a little bit more as well.
Appreciate that, Coach. Appreciate all of you listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.